Everyone keeps asking the same question. How do we make systems faster? But almost nobody wants to talk about the much more uncomfortable question. What happens when the system is faster than the person who has to make the final decision? Because at that point, AI isn't the bottleneck. And are we really ready to have that conversation? Welcome to the Swarm News. This is the show where veterans and engineers talk about defensive tech the way that it actually works, not the way that it gets marketed. If your systems assume perfect decisions at match machine speed, it's already lying to you. I'm Joshua Hill.
And I'm Vincent Lewis. And we'd like to say thank you for all those who are following, subscribing, and who come back to watch and hear what we have. If you haven't, we ask you to follow, like, and subscribe if you get a chance and if you like the content. And with that being said, just to kind of cover a little bit of sUAS news this week, it looks like the War Department has decided today to announce that they have a 25 vendors that have been invited to a phase one for the drone dominance program, which will be what will be used to select the version of a sUAS rebuildable delivery system prototype, or they're going to be developing a system that can be used for military means in regards to either attack drone or a recon or whatever it's going to be, but more so a reusable or rebuildable, simple, cost effective, and easier built system. So there's approximately 150 million being put into it to build a prototype for delivery, and those orders will be placed shortly thereafter, saying within the following 5 months after they win the contract. Industries currently at a place to where acquisition of these systems are going to be relatively more commonplace across the world, in the United States especially. So it's good to see that we're finally getting caught up, and they're working way faster, which is even a better thing. Is not having to take freaking 5 years to get something built. So right now, all this is going to be going on, and a lot of opportunities getting ready to be built coming up out of this. So we'll see what happens, and we'll keep you posted on things that are going on between that, the DARPA challenge, and other things that are going on. And there should be some updates on that coming here soon, because they'll be probably making some final revisions to what's going to happen. So that being said, back to you, Josh.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks for those updates.
No problem.
So, for decades, the limiting factor has always been technology. Sensors were slow, comms are fragile, data was scarce, so leaders learned to be patient. Waiting wasn't weakness, it was a necessity. Well, now the environment's flipped. Sensors are everywhere. Persistent IR, AI servicing insights continuously, but decision authority? That didn't move. We modernized sensing, we modernized processing, we've modernized how to get recommendations. We did not modernize how decisions are made or how responsibility is assigned. That mismatch is where friction lives.
Yeah, and from a sensor standpoint, this is a time where your problems kind of start to show. Different parts of the system now operate on completely different clocks. And you have some that works on milliseconds, some working on seconds, the processing parts of it. Human interfacing could be minutes to hours, and depending on what we have to do in regards to communicating with that system. And in this case, systems have the ability to fail, and it's a place to where if the system is arguing with itself, about when to act, it makes it a little bit more difficult for it to actually function the way it's supposed to.
Okay. So let me walk through this thing conceptually, not tactically, just structurally. Some decisions are reversible, some aren't. If an AI flags something advisory, you can undo it. Humans move faster, but when a decision carries irreversible consequences, humans slow down, and they should. This is where people misread hesitation as incompetence. It's not. It's risk awareness to make sure we're making the right decisions.
Yeah, and systems don't, irreversible systems aren't just the understanding of itself. It's a system that has its own protocols and decisions that it has to make through its own software that's being designed for it. And they understand probability and distribution in those probabilities. So if A hits this, then you do B, or if B is not, if and or you do next, whichever comes within that decision. And AI can easily decide because when it's looking at each individual thing that's doing, it can give a high confidence, pattern match, low variance of systems, and understanding of what you need. And it allows it to make that situation to where when it is deciding, especially if it's written in the right way, it allows the decision for your systems to be clear when done properly, and it allows the system to work, as anybody would say, a seamlessly. But when you run into where you don't make determinations of if you're in a place to where you're looking at a wood line and you don't take into account that you're getting any, how you put it, from the ground that you're looking for, or decision to say, hey, let's go to the side of the woods. In this case, if you had a thermal picture that needed to be seen of a person, and the only thing that the aircraft did was stay over top of the wood line and never went to the side, it may miss what could have been seen from here versus having the decision to just stand in its own location. So taking in those accounts, weighs a lot in decisioning. And when you take into that also moral decisions, there's consequences to actions. If it decides to take out a target because it feels that it was a determination that that target was a threat, but not really having the determination of how to identify the moral consequences of that, is that does it come into play the person who programmed it or the aircraft itself making the decision? How do you identify who's the problem in that problem? And the escalation of pathways. Who escalates it to who? Is it system escalated on its own, or is it the humans that escalate it? And the political fallout from those decisions. So if something takes out a target that wasn't meant, and it was a kid that was determined it's supposed to be a terrorist, and it wasn't, and it was just a kid with a toy or a kid with something that resembled a bomb or something like that, the people who have to now answer for it are answering for something that maybe they didn't even have any decision in the whole process in the beginning. So when you look at it and you take closer decisions, it gets in a place to where it's irreversible impacts that come from this, and that it ends up becoming a place to where humans reserve a lot of the right to the control if they do it the proper way. But then does it become truly autonomous? So you have in betweens that really need to be considered in that.
And I think this is where people say, why aren't leaders actually trusting the systems? And I mean, I would think that's because trust isn't binary. It's contextual. It's contextual.
Yeah, and it's truly, to be honest, it's like fire and forget in a lot of ways. When you look at and you think of a good idea, like thought of it, ICBM is a perfect example. I think you're trusting that when that ICBM takes off and it goes to where it's supposed to go, that it's going to get to where it needs to be, and it's going to hit the target it is expected to hit because the programming. Decision was you're launched. Once you hit a certain point, you're expecting that aircraft or that round or missile to then decide that it's going to determine at this point I'm going to release and then go to its decided trajectory of point, a target of going. That comes from the beginning where the person who launched it, because a lot of times once those go up, you don't have any decision from that point on in a lot of cases, from what I'm seeing, that it can't do anything else. If you take the movie theater thoughts of it, that you see situations where you're trying to hit a target. It's like hitting a very good example is it's like you're trying to hit a bullet with a bullet.
Right.
In this explanation of a drone, it's almost the same thing. They're flying fast, and you're trying to get it to do what it needs to. But when it's making the determinations, it's trying to make it at a quick, fast response, which they are faster than us. But conceptually, what is the determination that you want to look for? Does it need to be just good enough to be able to meet what's needed, or is it just one of those situations where you're just doing it just because it's meeting some requirement?
Yeah, I mean, going on along with what you're saying right now, I mean, the dangerous myth that's out there is that the faster information automatically means faster decisions. And it doesn't. I
Mhm.
mean, when leaders don't understand how a system arrived at that answer, they need to slow down. They ask, validate it, cross check it. Does anybody else agree with this? That delay isn't bureaucracy. It isn't accountability. I mean, it is an accountability asserting itself and making sure that we're fact checking and making the right decisions. That's the human element that still needs to be there.
Yeah, I agree. The human element is the most important. Is is it accomplishing what you want it to do? Is the AI truly doing what is built to do, or is it just doing it in its own aspect? Because when you look at ChatGPT and our aspects of it, when you say, "Hey, I need you to give me widget A to be able to do widget B," is it going to meet it? And did you determine that it did or didn't? And as we know, it's not always accurate. It comes up with some concepts that we're like, yeah, that's not really going to do what I need to. It's good, good thought, but it's not on a feasible basis. So, in the system, outputs with a situation where confidence is the most important part of it, and that confidence is built from the software being built correctly, and the person who's doing it in a good way, the input quality and the indicators of that showing. And if there isn't no flags that says, hey, this isn't working like it's supposed to, but this is what I'm doing, and your determinations that you can see in the backside of it that makes the decision proper. And the human helps to fill the gaps to say, hey, you're doing what you need, and we can see it. But when you get autonomous, it kind of changes the whole realm of it then, because it's like, can a human really fill that gap in that position? And because of it, it brings in a lot of caution into your design, or should take into consideration that. But you run into different problems when you take that decision. Like, do you want it fully autonomous or not? So you
Right.
have a lot to put into it.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, I mean, and another walkthrough, like with some of the things that leaders recognize immediately, is that AI isn't just speeding things up. It's in multiple inputs. Like there's more feeds, there's more alerts, there's more recommendations.
Yeah,
Responsibility doesn't shrink, it grows. I mean, leaders aren't deciding faster, they're triaging machines. That's not a decision superiority. I mean, it's basically cognitive overload. It analysis paralysis. We have too much
yeah,
data sometimes.
yeah. And that is important too, because like you're saying, like there's a lot of it. If it's creating a lot of inputs, someone has to determine if that is too much or not enough. And if it has a lot, like you just said, like the paralysis by analysis is a massive, can be a massive problem. You got to try to determine, and you only have seconds. And sometimes you have the ability to have like a longer period of time. But if you have too much information and you don't know what to do with it, you can miss something that's very important to what you're doing. And this becomes one of those places where is it a classic interface failure, or is this some of those situations that are just unthought through because you just didn't know it at the time, which comes into play sometimes. You don't always know what you don't know. And sometimes it takes having things be brought to the surface and be fleshed out before you actually know that this is a problem. And AI is an excellent generator of information and is also a terrible way of prioritizing some of your responsibilities at times, because that information can now, that's being pushed to it, may not need to, but Also, it can help you with that paralysis by analysis because it can analyze and determine on its own. So there's a double-edged sword. It's just finding that right sweet spot, and everything could look urgent, but doesn't mean it always is. And not everything is urgent, but when it is, it needs to be very highlighted and like glaring that, hey, this is something that we need to take into consideration. Good systems reduce those decision spaces to a place to where you don't have to worry about the decisions. AI is I think, a helper. It should be the backbone of, or not the backbone. It should be the support to the backbone of whatever your system is or what you're doing. So it allows you to get the best solution possible out of whatever is being done. And bad systems widen that ability for a decision to be made properly if it's not utilized in a proper way. And it can also freeze up what a human mindset could be to not give you what you need.
Yeah. And then when the leaders freeze, people blame leadership, not
Yeah.
the system that actually caused it. And I mean, I like what you said earlier. Like, if everything looks urgent, then nothing's urgent, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
really have to put an emphasis on something being number one priority. You can't have everything as a number one priority or nothing is.
Yeah.
So,
Agreed.
I mean, and now here's the part that nobody likes. When organizations try to remove the bottleneck, they don't remove the risk. They redistribute it. They create automation spreads, accountability so thin that like no one truly owns the outcome. So with again, I mean, if nothing's a priority, if
Everything's
everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. It's the same
yeah.
concept here with like creating multiple redistributions. Like now you're spreading it out to where now people are able to like point their finger at each other saying, you're the problem. No, you were the one that caused this. And you get the name game and name blame and all that other nonsense. So, and then when something goes wrong, everyone wants to point at the system. And that's just not efficiency.
That's an institutional failure at its finest when you really look at it. And technically, removing human introductions or interfaces brings in new failures too. So when you bring humans into the loop and they have a choice in it, and you take it out of the outcome of what the autonomy is made to do, it adds more biases into the solution. So you got to keep that in consideration of when you add in the human element of a system, it can change what the outcome for your feedback loops and applications are. So it also can create more demand on the person because now you're adding in alerts that may not have been there in the first place. So you add in, hey, I need you to let me know when there is this many people in this location at this time at this place, and now it dings you. Okay, you get it. But now if you were looking for some specific person in that same thing, because you get an ad hoc something saying, hey, we need you to find this, now you got to determine with all your stuff that you got to give you if it's giving you what you need. And then when you take into trying to correct those problems, will you have the time to do it? You know, and errors don't just stop automatically. Sometimes it takes a little bit of like, all right, I got to go through. But coming from back from the operator side of things, you do plan for that too. So if you have, in this case, if I was, flying back again in the army, what we had a manual. We had two people. One person was flying while the other person was the payload operator. As I'm flying, my payload operator is running off the checklist. So if there's a bunch of warnings that I'm seeing, I call out, or if they could see it on their side, they will read out what the problem was. I make a determination, and we just start to identify. And a lot of times in your manual, it kind of covers if it's a high priority, like red, yellow, right, yellow, brown. It's been a while now, think about it. But it would identify what your problems were and what was your highest priority. And we already kind of knew it, but that's the other part, knowing what your system is able to do and taking that into account for making sure that it doesn't compound quite as fast as you was want it to. So it makes it easier.
Yeah, I mean, and the worst part about all this, people trust the system right up until it fails. So, I mean, here's the reframe of everything we just did. I mean, the human bottleneck isn't a flaw. It's a bad control surface. It's where values live. It's where accountability lives. It's where escalation needs to pause. When systems force humans to slow down, that pause is often, which is often the last safeguard.
Yeah. And good engineers don't truly fight the bottleneck, it designs around it. So when you're able to get those solutions fixed quickly and you figure out what you need to do, it makes the decision a lot easier. Decision gating, confidence thresholds, escalation ladders, graceful, how can I put it? Graceful deterioration over time. And I guess that's a better solution of like when you have a problem that needs to be fixed and it can be able to be fixed quickly without having to, or not quickly, it can be fixed even though it is escalating through situations such as an engine failure. If an engine fails, you have a process to go through to get it back up so you can gracefully get your system going again without having to be concerned with completely losing it. And not everything should be automated. Some things need to be at a place to where it's decisionable. So if it has automation, you can change it. And that's again where we are with sUAS. It's a hit or miss situation because it's one of those systems that's, hey, they're disposable. So do you care if it's actually been destroyed? Or if you wanted to come back, what's the biggest difference? And is it helpful to have that decision is a big one to really think of too. Some things should be slow and intentional, while other things may not need to be there. It can just be instantaneous. So you got two edges of the sword that really need to be considered in all this.
Yeah, and I mean, let's remember, AI didn't remove humans from decision making. It exposed how much we depend on them. Faster systems didn't fix judgment. Better tech doesn't replace responsibility. If your system can't operate within human limits, it won't survive reality.
Yeah, and good systems don't eliminate people; they protect them. They actually help them out in a lot of ways.
If this episode made you rethink speed, AI, and leadership, share it with someone who believes faster is always better. Sometimes the most advanced thing a system can do is actually slow down at the right moment. If this perspective matches how you think, subscribe, like, follow us, and we'll see you next time.
Same. You guys have a good one. Thank you.